And of course, I do this show essentially 50 weeks out of the year. 50 times 5 is 250 days of sports talk radio that I bring you. But Swanny made a great point. He said, if you get to the national championship game, that's 15 days of football that you get to play as a player. 15 days. That's just a little over 2 weeks of football. And again, these games are merely hours. And so when you start to really think about how short a season is and a career at the college level, the collegiate level for these young men, the guys that only played 3 seasons, etc., it really does go by in a blink. Like, I'm often taken aback at the fact that Trevor Lawrence is already gone from Tiger Town. I'm often taken aback anytime we have a player who does the old 3 and done. And a Mackenzie Alexander scenario where you get the 2 and done. Coach Simpson, for our Gamecock fans, peeking over the fence and hanging out with us. A 2 and done. You get the first year red shirt, 2 seasons, you're elite, you're gone. And so it is in a blink, we're at week 2. And again, to think that of the 365 days that there are in a year, only 15 of them do we potentially get college football on. The other 350, we have to wait and wish and hope to have college football. So you know what? Soak it in this weekend, man. Take it all in. I know there can be days where the games will start at noon and they won't kick the final kickoff until 10:30 at night. Take in as much as you can, if you can, and if you want to, because I'm excited about this year. A lot left on the table for the Clemson Tigers. And as I have said here on this program for a while now, especially since Clemson lost to Georgia, enjoy the run, though. Enjoy the ride. And yeah, Clemson's back's against the wall. Sure, the margin of error is shot. But don't listen to the haters. Don't listen to the people that tell you you're done. Those people, again, as I said yesterday, the cowards, I think I called them, they're really just scared of Clemson. It's not who you play. It's how you play. And if Clemson plays their best, they could beat that Georgia team they lost to because Clemson didn't play their best. Georgia played a pretty doggone good game by comparison to Clemson and barely escaped. Let's not forget that. I mean, if we're going to pump up the dogs, if you got to pump them up nationally, let's not forget that Georgia actually played better than Clemson and yet still barely knocked off your Tigers. I don't know what that says, but, maybe that's the way you ought to look at it as we move forward. 803-450-0086. All right, so who all is hanging out today? If you share the show, we'll put you in the share zone. If you subscribe to the show on YouTube, we will also put you in the share zone. So my question today, as we move forward towards Clemson and SC State, is your biggest concern. What is your biggest concern for Clemson at this point? And number 2, how will you gauge whatever that concern is this weekend against SC State? Or is this just a week where if my biggest concern is the offensive line, Clemson's going to dominate it anyway, and so I don't know that I've learned anything? Maybe if your biggest concern is, hey, Clemson's inability to get wideouts open in the downfield passing game, and they do that against SC State this weekend, did you really learn anything? Like, that's the 2 questions I have. Number 1, what's your biggest concern? And 2, what can you hope to learn this weekend about that concern anyway? I mean, I don't think there's much to learn. And I think that the best case scenario for this game, and I was on the radio earlier today with Mark Ryan up at ESPN Upstate, and he asked me about it. And the best thing I could come up with, the best comparison I can give you, is what takes place 2 hours before the Golden State Warriors go on the basketball court, and that is the greatest shooter of our generation, perhaps even of all time. Steph Curry goes out on the court and warms up, gets in a rhythm, gets some shots up. That's the only real positive I can serve you up about taking on SC State, is that I think you have to hope that it gets your Clemson Tigers in a bit of a rhythm, sets them up for the rest of the regular season. Gaining confidence is a part of that, obviously. Yeah, film study should help, finding things, mistakes that you have made. But I think that's the big benefit of a game like this for Clemson. I think it would have been the big benefit if Clemson had played a game like this in the opener. It just gives you a little margin of error. It gives you a chance to make some mistakes, but get them straightened out, and then ultimately find a little rhythm before you get into the remaining games on your schedule. Now, as for my biggest concern, and I know the offensive line is something that people are destined to talk about, but I'm not so sure that the offensive line issues that Clemson had in this game was as much about Clemson's offensive line as it was about facing one of the toughest defensive fronts you're going to face in college football. And no question, the toughest defensive front Clemson is going to run into until perhaps a college football playoff matchup or a postseason bowl matchup. I don't believe there's a team in the ACC, Atlantic or Coastal, not named Clemson, that's got the defensive front that the Georgia Bulldogs put on display in Charlotte. But the biggest concern for me, because of that fact, like you could say, it's Clemson's offensive line, but they were going to get some great dudes. I mean, there's a real legitimate chance that this Clemson offensive line could play well the rest of the season, look great the rest of the year, and maybe actually be really, really good. But what I think has to change is the unwillingness to rush the football at times. And if I'm going to have a criticism of Tony Elliott and Clemson's offense, that's probably it. But in a day and age where we have seen the sport go from 2 yards in a cloud of dust, option football, hands off, handing the ball off to the fullback, getting the quarterback on the edge with a pitch, to this elaborate downfield onslaught. I think at least in the context of what this game has become and what you watch on Saturdays from coast to coast, you can almost understand how, as a coach, you could quickly find yourself not rushing the football as much because things are so wide open. Because players now play the little 7-on-7 football and guys are so accustomed to space. And that aspect of the game has really, I don't know what the frame would be, 20 years, 25 years. About like the big man in basketball, so too has gone the way of the consistent grind and ground and pound attack on offense that we saw for so many years. Now there are teams that still do it and well. Alabama, Wisconsin, Clemson, even with Travis Etienne, had some really solid years on the ground last season, not being one of those. But I would like to see a willingness from your Clemson Tigers to commit to rushing the football, especially in the red zone and deep in the red zone, as it pertains to Clemson at the 5-yard line, not running the ball at all. That to me with a quarterback the size of DJ Uiagalelei. I can't for the life of me understand why. And here's the other thing. If you had not had success with Taj Boyd in that capacity, and let's not forget, Tony Elliott was not the offensive coordinator for Taj Boyd, but was a part of those teams. But you had success with Taj Boyd rushing the football during his time at Clemson, and that was really a time where the Tigers didn't have a power back like they've got now with a guy like Kobe Pace, or even what I think many people believe Phil Maffa can ultimately become. But there was a willingness in those Chad Morris offenses to rush the quarterback. And yes, Clemson's at a different place in 2021 in that you wouldn't want to damage. Remember the comparison I made when we were talking about Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence, and I said you don't park a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a Bentley. You don't park that in a grocery store parking lot in between two cars. Like, you just don't do it. I think that can be sort of what you feel like maybe Clemson's got a little bit of concern or hesitation with DJ rushing the football, because if by chance he gets injured, I think the confidence of this Clemson Tiger team would be shot, because he is the straw that stirs the drink. No question about it. 803-450-0086. 803-450-0086. Trying to take a look here to see Taj Boyd's stats. I'm not sure these stats are accurate on Taj Boyd. That must be. I mean, this is what it says. 154 attempts for 400 yards as a senior. 186 attempts for 514 yards as a junior. And 142 attempts for 218 yards as a sophomore. So, a lot of opportunities there. Like, it's so many opportunities, it doesn't even feel right. Let me look at Trevor's just for sake of comparison here for you in terms of rushing yards. So again, hundreds, almost 200 attempts one season rushing for Taj Boyd. Let's see, what did Trevor do? 103 attempts in 2019, only 68 a year ago. But again, that rushing game for the quarterback for Clemson before Tony Elliott took over, I mean, it was much more substantial than even I remembered looking at those numbers. And I think that's where you got to get with DJ. You just gotta believe that DJ Uiagalelei is going to be able to give you 2-3 yards on a power play. Just a QB extra hat in the box. Running back picking up a linebacker and, man, get out of the way. Let that 250-pound train rumble. In his career currently, DJ Uiagalelei has 42 carries, 28 a year ago, 14 in the season opener. Now, the 14 went for minus 22 yards. So you want to see that become a more productive running scenario. But I think that would be one thing for me to see a constant willingness to bring DJ into the run game would be a big positive for this Clemson Tiger team. And I think it would give them not just additional balance in the run and pass game, but it makes you prepare for something else that you currently don't really have to prepare for overly, because it does feel like DJ just wants to stand in the pocket and spin the bean down the field. He's got a heck of an arm and can certainly do it. We got the Honey King of the Upstate. Kyle's in the house today. What's up, Kyle? Hope you're doing well, man. Corey says, Swanny, we used to run the ball to set up the pass. We've gotten away from that. It does feel like that to a degree. And again, this is an offensive era. It is a unique era in the sport where the passing game has become the strength. And in the old days, the conversations about the pass were 3 things could happen and 2 of them were bad. Now it's almost completely reversed. I mean, it's let's throw the ball down the field, and what's the worst that could happen? Like it is a completely different mindset from yesteryear when it comes down to how the game is managed from an offensive perspective. 803-450-0086. You know, over the past weekend, there were 2 teams that I think most people considered to look elite. Georgia, and again, I argue Clemson also looked elite in that game. You know, Clemson wasn't the trash some people would have you believe. But Georgia and Alabama. But it wouldn't be the college football season, much like it wouldn't be the Christmas season without mistletoe and holly, if Nick Saban didn't get fired up about something. That goes together like peas and carrots, as Forrest Gump would say. Saban and getting agitated. I'll tell you what happened in Tuscaloosa after this.
Now, Columbia's most